Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Sara Wiseman. Today, we're going to talk about something that I find pretty interesting. We're going to talk about this concept of containers of particulate, which is something, again, we're working from the Gabriel Messages book. It's something that the guides have been talking to me about for quite some time, a couple of years now. And I do tend to research things, like I'm lightly aware of quantum physics and ideas of, say, the field or string theory or different states of dimension and so forth. So I'm vaguely aware of those ideas in science, but I don't really follow stuff. I'm in order to keep the channeling very clear, I sort of deliberately don't allow myself to be filled with ideas that are already out there. I'm really trying to bring what comes in and have like a beginner's mind to it, so that when it comes in, I'm not applying no knowledge to it or known understanding or my own belief systems about something. I'm just letting it come in. So that's been really an important part of this process for me. So when they start talking about particulate, I've been really interested because there is this correspondence to ideas like the God particle and this idea of life or life force or energy being in everything. But the guides are not talking to me about it in this way of science. They're talking to me in a way that's almost more like art or symbol or something that's easier to understand, something that isn't required to know math or science, but really we can understand it as an idea. And what they seem to be saying is when we understand something as an idea or concept, like when it's just simply like gravity, gravity always holds everything down. Gravity so we don't fly away. That simple idea of gravity is what gives us a belief system in gravity, which is what allows us to use gravity. And so this idea of particulate, they're giving this very simple idea so that we can start to kind of turn our minds into a different way of looking at things. And when we turn our minds into a different perspective, then we can have different experiences, as our what we are thinking about determines what we experience, determines almost like the dimensional awareness. Our consciousness level determines our dimensional level and where we exist. And so by giving this simple idea, we can learn to live there without having to have, like PhDs in quantum physics or whatever. So let me just read this first one and we'll talk about it a little bit. Containers of particulate. When you realize you are particulate, a collection of particulate in human form in the container that you live in, as does everyone else, and all of you as souls are really just collections of particulate that are part of the universe, which is collective consciousness, which is collective soul, then you see you cannot do anything without each other because you are one. By other, we do not mean other human, although of course this is part of it. We mean all other, which may be animals, trees, plants, all the living creatures, and also all the inanimate beings, which are not considered living because they hold no biology, but are absolutely containers of particulate just as you are. Consider this: if you want to dissolve into anything, you can. If you want to dissolve into anything, you can. I've just been thinking of this quite a bit. At the time of this recording, the Los Angeles fires are, they haven't stopped, they're not contained, and many people are, their homes have been destroyed. I tend to channel these a little bit in advance so I don't panic and get behind. And I also had experience in the Oregon fire several years ago, and this idea of particulate is interesting because it almost reminds me, and I also had experience in Mount St. Helens eruption bazillion years ago. I was living in Seattle at that time, and I remember this idea of ash coming down from the sky in those experiences, right? So you expect the air to be just clear, and then you notice that there's all this stuff coming down in the ash, or in the sky, in the air. And it feels like two things. One, this helps us understand, like the guides have talked a lot about, the air is not nothing. Like the air is teeming with bacteria, water, moisture, particles, little bits of grit and grass and sand. It's all just always in the air, right? We have our idea that the air is just clear. But if we look at the air enough, we see it's not clear at all. Or we might take a container of what we think of as clear water, and then we look under a microscope, it's not clear at all. It's teeming with other stuff. When we look at the air and it's filled with ash, we just realize how our understanding, or our acceptance of how things are in the material world, the air, the water, the table, our bodies, the way we think about this is as if they're these separate solid forms that don't meld and interact with each other. And if we go down to this tiniest level of particulate, underneath the cells, the molecules, the electrons, tinier than that, we get to this particulate aspect, and this is a piece of consciousness. And everything in the universe is made up of these pieces of consciousness. Not just in the human body, we're filled with particulate of consciousness, but also in things like, again, the table, the air, the rock, all these things we consider non-living and therefore non-conscious, but they are conscious because they also are made up of this particulate. And this idea that nothing happens on its own, everything is done in agreement. The particulate, which is everything, decides as awareness together what's supposed to happen. I was thinking of these places on Earth now, at time of recording, these sort of hot spots from either war or natural disaster, and there's quite a few going on at this time. And I've been thinking about times when I've seen, I used to live kind of out in nature, and I would often come across these giant ant hills in the middle of the woods. And if you throw a little rock on the ant hill, everyone scrambles to attention, and all the ants, really are in a flurry about this. And what it reminds me of is right now on Earth, on Gaia, we have these places where all the ants, us, are scurrying around trying to fix everything because they've been disturbed, or they're having disturbances, or there's been natural disaster, or there's been war. And just kind of the smallness of us in this lifetime. the kind of the smallness. And then this idea that whether we're living or whether we're not living, we and everything still has this level of consciousness. And I really want to get a sense from you guys what you think about this idea of collective soul. You see, you cannot do anything without each other because you are one. And this idea of how everything has to decide together, like the universe, not just Earth, not just our situation here, but the universe is always moving into, like, I guess I would call it an expanding balance. So all the particulate is making itself known at the level of awareness that it's at. And all of this is sort of being put into the hopper, as it were, and then the results are spit out. Now, you can apply this to humans in this lifetime, but also remember, humans are living many lifetimes all at once in different dimensions. We have our past life, we have our future life, we got tons of those. And then just remembering we've also got these parallel lifetimes, and then we've got these different little moments of nowness. And so pretty soon the field gets, really crowded. And then, of course, the field is always expanding infinitely. So this place of being in your life with your particular, the particular problems and thoughts you have, I can see why the Buddhists and also maybe some of the other religions are like, just relax, let go of attachment. How can we be attached to anything when we're just this loosely arranged collection of particulate agreeing to hold together in physical form as a human life right now? Everything else is being determined by collective, which is the consciousness agreeing, and that's not just human, it's everybody. And so we can't get too attached to how anything's going to be. I'm sure all the people in these places where there's been deep trauma in regions from war or natural disaster, I'm sure that before this started, the people there didn't really have a sense like my life's going to change dramatically, or yourself before you've been in an accident or had an illness or that's happened to someone you love, this impermanence of the state that we're in right now, it could change in any moment, or it might not change. And I used to get kind of bored when not a lot was going on. Sometimes I'd have periods where I was deeply involved in something maybe that I was responsible for, but I didn't love that much, or I was deeply committed to some particular thing I was doing, and again, the slogging of doing that thing or being responsible for that thing, whatever it was, and feeling this sense of boredom, like, when will the exciting stuff happen? And now that I've been through some of this exciting stuff, which can actually also be a drama of a lot of bad stuff. Trauma, it's, we've all been through this stuff, right? It's really hard. It's really painful. It really changes you forever. You're no longer this person of innocence. You've been changed by the trauma you've gone through. So now, when things are a little boring, I'm kind of like, yeah, just enjoy it. Enjoy the lack of drama going on. So anyway, I just invite you to use this idea, or use a different idea, but use this idea of thinking about yourself as a collection of particulate that is consciousness. and thinking about everything else as the same. Everything is this, every little thing, even a piece of air, even a drop of water, even the table, even your hair, whatever it is, it's consciousness at the tiniest form, and it's infinite, and it's always communicating. So when you know that, we used to think maybe God the Father, Jesus, or whatever religion we were following, this, what is a mono deity, or saints and helpers of the highest order. We used to think that's who's in charge. That's who's determining the flow of the universe. And what the guys are saying in the Gabriel messages is no, everything's conscious. Everything determines everything. And so when you have this sense that you don't have to be good or behave a certain way, and consciousness continues to be conscious regardless of how you toe the line or not, then it kind of is very relaxing. You can choose to have as much drama and trauma, pain, and suffering in your life as you want. To some extent, you can make choices that lead you to those situations. Like namely, you could do addiction, or you could do life of crime, or you could just be a jerk all the time, and you could be a chaos maker, and all of those things would lead toward a lot of drama. Or you could just decide to experience your life as a beautiful experience, one moment at a time, in this state of nowness. So you're just sort of with all the particulates swirling around, all the consciousness in one moment, and then, next moment, I'll do that again. And all this stuff of the world, what's going on, who's in leadership, to some extent, we have to pay some attention to a lot of this, but a lot of what we're bombarded with, we don't have to pay attention to. So beginning to get that discernment of what can you let go of attachment to, what's not really that important to you. Anyway, it's a big discussion, obviously. I'm just fascinated that it's coming in as such a simple idea, because this allows us to kind of churn it over in our own minds and think about, well, what does that mean to me? And then what about this? And how does that apply? Blah, 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 blah. Anyway, this is the kind of stuff that I like to consider in my own life. Anyway, go to the website and see what's new. It's sarawiseman.com. I made a lot of changes in the last year or so go there and see what you can find that might help you in your path. It's sarawiseman.com, and I will see you guys